A massive key to shooting lower scores is having a good short game. Now today we're going to define short game as any shot really inside of 40 to 50 yards. And the more confident you get and the more you develop your skills, you will see massive results in the rest of your game. Everything will become a lot easier, you'll play more stress-free golf, and if you can hit nice close chip shots just like that, maybe even hole it, then you're going to start to shoot lower scores. So let's start off with one major key concept every golfer needs to know when it comes to hitting a short game shot. And this is something we've only recently discovered because technology's allowed us to measure short game shots in a lot more detail. And that is, any shot that we hit, we are hitting down on when it comes to short game. How much? We will see the best players in the world be around -4 to -12 degrees down. So they are hitting down on the ball. Now you get two main kinds of short game players. You get the first golfer who has one shot that they are very good at. It's the same technique, same setup, same swing thoughts for everything. What they'll do is they'll just change the club to produce different shots. So if they're using a lob wedge, it'll stop a lot quicker. If they're using a pitching wedge, it'll roll out a lot more. Now that is way easier. And for a lot of you, when you're doing that technique, you will hit that technique about 80 to 90% of the time. On a few occasions, you might have to lob the ball very high. I'll show you how to do that later on in the video. But your second golfer is one that just picks one club, often their sand wedge or lob wedge, and they'll just manipulate it loads. I think that is a very, very high skill. I would go with the first technique where you go one shot that you're amazing at, and then you just change the club to your advantage, depending on the shot that you're hitting. So let's show you how to hit that one first. I will go through how to manipulate things later down the line. So I'm going to use my 52-degree wedge here in this situation. Reason for it is this is a very, very simple shot. We will move on to harder ones, but it's going to get the ball on the ground quick and rolling. So how do we set up to this shot? Well, we've got to make this as user-friendly, as easy as possible, especially if you don't have a lot of time to practice. So the first thing I'm going to do from the downline view is I'm going to, if this is my normal sort of setup, I'm going to get closer to the golf ball. Why? This forces me to raise the handle up. When I raise the handle up, it lifts the heel off the ground, which is the sharpest part of the leading edge. So it just gives me more margin for error. The second thing from the downline view is I would go, for this sort of shot, I would go either a square stance or a slightly open stance. The reason I say that is because I don't want you to start to go, they used to teach set up at a 45-degree angle. This would just force you to lean the shaft too much and just dig every single time. So by going neutral to slightly open, it just makes life so much easier in terms of controlling the path, the strike, the shaft lean, everything else. So that's the downline view. And the face-on view, we're going to work from the ground up. First thing, the feet, how wide should they be? A good reference guide is about a club head width between the heels. This is going to prevent you from swaying side to side too much, making it easier to hit the same spot on the ground over and over again, helping us with the consistency. The second thing is the lead foot. I like to flare it slightly. This just promotes a little bit of weight moving towards the target and nice rotation on the way through, two things that are key to good strike. Moving up the body, I want to see that when I get to the hips and the chest, that they are stacked on top of each other. The biggest issue I see is this. They take spine tilt in their normal swing and they bring it into their short game. When you tilt your spine in short game, you bring your low point back. That's going to cause you to hit it fat or thin. So you want to feel like you can get your shoulders relatively level, and from there, you might even feel like you're leaning towards the target. A really nice way of doing this is walking into the ball and setting up left below right and feeling like as you put your left hand on, it pulls your left shoulder down this way slightly. You'll feel a little bit more weight in that left foot, about 60 to 70%, and from there that puts you in a really nice position. When I'm setting up here, I'm using my normal grip that I use in my full swing. Grip pressure is very light, very, very light. And from there, I will have the hands roughly pointing, or the shaft roughly pointing at my belt loop here. And ball position wise, it's going to be middle to maybe a smidge back of middle. So from there, that's a really nice setup position to where it's going to make this shot super, super simple to hit, just like this. So that might just pull up a smidge short, but overall you can see it was dead on line. So let's now run through the motion. So the first one is when we are doing our motion, our chip shot, our pitch shot, our bunker shot, is that the lower body is there for stability. It's our kind of stable base. So one of the big issues I see is golfers, they move their lower body way too much, or they are physically shifting their weight from side to side. We want to feel like when we are hitting any short game shot that our lower body is the stable base. So if we set up with a tiny bit more pressure in the left leg to start with, it stays there, or if anything, increases slightly. The time you'll see a little bit of turn is actually in the follow through as it follows the upper body. So lower body is for stability, therefore upper body is the motor of the swing. That's what keeps turning throughout the whole swing. And you'll see a lot of good short game players, they'll hit a shot and they'll finish like this. Their chest will be pointing towards the target, belt buckle pointing towards the target. And that's because on the way back, their chest turned, lower body was stable. On the way through, everything sort of turned together, chest turning a little bit more. But that chest turning is crucial for having a good strike. Now, what do the wrists do? What do the hands and arms do? Things like that. Now you see some golfers, they chip very wide to wide, and other golfers are a little bit more narrow. If you have a good grip, so your normal sort of grip, and you have a good relaxed grip pressure, if you are turning your chest, the club will naturally just swing and set by itself. So you want to feel like as you're hitting these shots, your grip pressure is nice and relaxed here, and that then is going to help you produce some far better contacts just like that. Let's go into some troubleshooting, because that is going to be a crucial part of all of this. Troubleshooting number one, I see so many golfers in the backswing take that club head too low and too inside. When you do this, remember we're trying to hit down on this 4 to 12 degrees. When you take that club low and inside, if I was just to relax and let go of the club there, you can see how the club head drops behind me. This now means from here, I'm going to have to drive the handle towards the ball, and this is where you'll hit your fat shots, shank shots, sting shots, all of those different things. But if I can keep the club head level to slightly outside of my hands and I let it drop, you can see how it drops back in front of me. This allows me to stay a lot more relaxed with my chip shots and pitch shots and bunker shots, allows me to get better contact by just simply keeping that club head in front of us. It also allows us to get that angle of attack for free. You won't need to worry about it if you do that correctly. So here's an amazing exercise to help you with this. Grab an alignment stick and set up to the ball just like so. Go from the front of your ankle and go about half a club length outside of it. Now, if I place that into the ground there, you can see if I do a chip shot here and I take it inside, how it clips the alignment stick. So your goal is to hit shots and avoid that stick the whole time. So if I do it here, I'm going to avoid that stick in the backswing and then go all the way through. And you can see I've hit that a little bit too hard there, but the strike was really good. That was just me swinging too far back, too far through, but the strike was perfect. That's going to help you fix that inside takeaway. So the second fault I see so many golfers fall into is they get too armsy. Now, if you get too armsy in your backswing, I want you to grab a head cover and place it underneath your trail arm. This will force you to keep that arm more quiet and get your chest turning a little bit more. So you can do some swings where you keep it under there that whole time, and you can see it forces my chest to turn more. If I do that shot for you right here, you can see it kept that beautiful connection right there. Now, the opposite can apply for the downswing. If you get too sort of chicken wingy this way, you can grab that head cover, place it underneath your left arm, and then from there hit some shots where it keeps that chest turning, and you can see that gets my chest pointing towards the target. It keeps me nice and connected right there. If I hit this shot here, and you can see everything stayed beautifully connected, and if that keeps going, is it in? Oh, nearly. But you can see just by placing a head cover under the trail arm, that fixes the backswing. Under the lead arm, that helps you fix the downswing. Problem number 3 is too tight of a grip pressure. You're gripping that club too tight. Very simple fix for this. Number 1, lift your thumbs off at address. Number 2, do your whole motion keeping your thumbs off the club. With your thumbs off the club, you cannot over grip the club, so it makes you feel like you have to have that beautiful tempo, keeping that chest turning, and you can get some great strikes just like that. Now, the other great thing is then when you put your hands back on the club, you can just feel like you have light thumbs. So your thumbs are super light when you chip. That's going to keep the grip pressure light. And from there, you're going to be able to hit some better chip shots. And again, that's gone in the hole on that one. So the final one is what your head movement does. Now, we see with the best players in the world, two main things happen. They, number one, in the backswing, if they're going to go anywhere, they're going to go towards the target. And as they come through, they're going to go up. If you are dropping down at any point or your head's backing away from the ball, we're in trouble. So what I love for golfers to feel like is they start very nice and in the middle of their stance, and as they take it back, they move their nose over their left toe. Nose over the left toe and feel like they finish tall. Nose over the left toe, finish tall. And you can see when I do that, it gets a nice strike, took a little bit of a groovy bounce, but overall, that's not too bad of a shot right there. So that is a basic short game technique that's going to do wonders for your game and some troubleshooting of common problems. Now let me show you how with golfer number one, where they keep the technique the same, how using 3 different clubs is going to produce 3 different trajectories and 3 different rollouts. So let's start with a pitching wedge. Now I have moved slightly further away from the green here. Now if I hit this pitching wedge correct and I land it maybe just a couple paces on the green, you're going to see it roll out. And that's simply because if I keep the technique the same here and I hit the shot, how you can see there, that literally landed maybe an inch on the green. It's actually stopped up pretty good considering, but I don't think I could hit that shot any better right there. But look, even though it landed maybe that far on the green, it released all the way back to the flag. Now, if I move to, let's say, a 52 and I hit the same shot, I can now land this closer to the hole in order to get it to stop right by the hole to finish. And that's because it's got a better stopping power than the pitching wedge. So this is a gap wedge, there's the pitching wedge. Let's hit this shot. So you can see I've landed that one further up, and that stops maybe a smidge short of the hole, but overall a good result. The 58 degree, and remember, this is exactly the same technique. I'm gonna have to hit this one a lot further up, maybe halfway between the front edge of the green and the hole. And that's because the more loft it has, the more stopping power it has. Again, it's the same technique, but I'm just gonna have to hit this harder. So you can see that I landed that a lot further up and it stopped a lot quicker. Now, how can I use the same club and hit those 3 different trajectories? Well, the middle one is exactly the same. It's the same technique. But if I want to hit something that lands closer to me and releases out, but still I'm using, let's say, a lob wedge here, how am I going to be able to take that loft off? Because I've got to turn this lob wedge into a pitching wedge. Hence why, again, this is a more complicated route, and I would always recommend just changing the club. It's so much easier. But if you were to do it, number one, you would have to put the ball back and add shaft lean. This straight away is going to take loft off. Number 2, you would then aim slightly to the right. Why? This allows you to close the face, which again helps you take even more loft off. Because remember, we've got to take this from a 58 to a 46, essentially, to a pitching wedge. So we've got to take 12 degrees off. So ball back, hands forwards, aim slightly right, close the face, and then from there you can feel like you hit a little bit of a lower sort of draw shot. Again, hence why this is a lot more of a higher skill player shot. And you can see I've hit that one, it's going to release up that slope and it's acted a lot more like a pitching wedge. Now, if I wanted to hit something that stops a little bit quicker, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the ball forwards. I'm actually going to widen my stance out and I'm going to feel like I play it with a lot more of a neutral shaft. I might even also just open the face slightly. Now, a big key with this shot is as I come through, I want that face to be pointing back at me. This helps, imagine sort of whipping your hand under the ball. This helps me get a lot of spin in this shot. So if I stand a little bit wider, ball a little bit more forwards, then from there I'm going to feel like I can whip that trail hand under. You're going to see this ball stop a hell of a lot quicker, like so. So you can see I've hit that all the way up at the hole and look how quickly that one stopped. So here's an amazing performance drill to help you hone in your technique. Now, this is all about being able to hit the ball straight when chipping. And this is something that a lot of golfers actually struggle with. So what I've got here is a golf ball and an alignment stick. Now, it's probably about 3 paces past the golf ball. And all I'm trying to do here is trying to hit that alignment stick. And here's the thing is when you start to go back and forth doing this, let me see if I can do this, you will start to realize that actually even though you're going to miss the alignment stick more than you're probably going to hit it, it hones in a really good technique. So you can see with all of these shots here, I hit it on that one, all of these shots here, the contact's really good, and I'm able to actually sort of free up because all my focus is on the alignment stick. So by simply doing my routines, coming in, hitting the shot, you will notice that your bad shots get so much better doing exercises like this. And you can see there, so out of the 3 shots I've hit, I missed the first one, but the next 2 I've hit. Let's see if I can make it 3 in a row. But you can see all of these have been great strikes. I've not duffed it, not thinned it, and all of these are just helping me in terms of my routine, helping me tighten the screws, and there's 3 for 3. That's an amazing drill for you to try to help you improve your short game. So I've pulled myself back to about 50 or 60 yards away from the flag here. So in this situation, how do I hit this goal shot? Because so many of you are struggling. Well, the first thing is that everything is about strike. We are trying to make it as easy as possible to just get that solid contact. Now go to whatever club feels comfortable in this situation. Now I've actually given myself quite a tricky shot here. I've not given myself a huge amount of green to work with, so I am going to have to go to a higher lofted club here. So I've got a 58 degree. But the principles are the same. My setup is going to be very similar. So I'm going to have a neutral spine and not tilting. I'm going to be feeling like my stance is maybe a little bit wider, but besides that, everything's staying the same. I'm still keeping the weight on the left leg. I'm just turning back and turning through more, and that is going to help me ensure I can hit this shot solidly. So it's really a case of set up, make sure that spine angle's in a good position, and then from there make sure I just keep turning all the way through, and trying to finish in that good position is going to be a great cue for me. So let's see how I get on here. So I took maybe a little bit more divot than I would like, but actually the result is awesome. Now what if I wanted to hit this higher, hit this lower? It's the same principles as before, but I like to add in one extra element here, and you can add this into the shorter shots as well, but it's how this club head swings around the body. So for example, when we hit the low shot earlier, we put the ball back, hands forwards. When we did the higher shot, put it forwards, a little bit of a wider stance, face slightly open, things like that. If I want to hit a lower shot, I want to feel like it's a lot wider, the movement of the club head. You can see how it's wider away from my body. This is great for links golf, or if you've got loads of green to work with, you can set up with a lower lofted club, ball slightly back, feel like that club head is wide to wide. That's going to get the ball coming out low. If you want to hit something higher, you're going to go ball more forwards, a little bit more loft, maybe open the face slightly and go club head narrow to club head narrow. So it's just allowing us to manipulate how much of the wrist we use. So if I try and hit something a little bit higher to this flag, because this actually would normally need something a little bit higher or something with a hell of a lot of spin, but let me hit a shot here. I get that set up right, feeling like I've got a little bit more of a narrower swing. Let's see if I can hit this ball just that little bit higher. And you can see there, might be a little bit short. Yeah, just a smidge short, maybe you probably got about 10 feet there, but the trajectory was nearly twice as high. And that is very simply because I was feeling that club come narrower to narrower. So you can see you've got options in this situation. So let's now talk about hitting shots from the rough, because this is a question that I get asked all the time. So what changes? Well, when we are in the rough, obviously the grass is longer. It doesn't take any rocket science to understand that. The issue with the longer grass is as we come down, there's now more interference between the club and the ball because grass gets stuck in between. So what we have to do is, number one, we have to recognize the lie. Now I have 2 lies that I look at when it comes to rough. The first one is that one where it sits really just right on top. So it's kind of like on a tee. I could slide my finger under that ball quite easily. This second one is the harder one, and that's where the ball is sat down. So you can see, look at the difference between these 2 lies. This one is fluffy underneath. This one is sat right down towards the ground. Now the way we play these 2 shots is very, very different. This one here, where it's sat more on top of the grass, we can get that club sliding under and we can still generate a really good amount of spin. So in this situation, we've just got to be careful that we don't sort of overspin it or go underneath it, essentially. So if I'm hitting this shot here, it's like kind of hitting a chip shot off a tee. I've got to make sure that I have a nice sort of neutral setup, and as I come down, I feel like I keep my height. I'm not trying to chuck that club under too excessively. So if I hit that one here, I'm going to feel like my setup's the same, so I'm still leaning, I've got all of that stuff, but because the ball's sat up a little bit more, I'm going to have a nice shallow shot, and you can see that pops the ball up beautifully, and that's a really nice shot right there, about a foot, 2 foot away from the hole. Now this one's a lot harder, and this is the more common one I would see. This is one where it's sat down more, so it's down lower, so close to the ground. Now the issue with this is this really gets a lot of, you can see, it really gets a lot of grass caught in between the clubhead and the ball. This lowers spin. So when you have this sort of lie, you cannot spin it. You cannot spin it. So the ball is going to come out with less spin and it's going to roll more. So we have to do a couple of things. Number one, we have to pick our landing spot a lot closer to us to allow for that rollout. Number two, we have to take a more lofted club. And number three, we also have to get a lot better at having a steeper angle of attack. So earlier on, I said, look, when you're hitting a standard shot, as long as you have a nice relaxed grip pressure, wrist set will take care of itself, which is true. But in these situations, we need to add a little bit more wrist set. So basically, I want to get this club head up quicker so it can come down steeper. Why? The steeper it comes down, the less grass interference I'm going to have. So in this situation, depending on sort of the shot, I've got quite a bit of room to work with here. I'm still going to play the ball back. I'm just going to feel like I use a little bit more of my right wrist to pick that club up and drop it down. Now, I'm only trying to land this a couple of yards on the green, couple of feet on the green, and you'll see this sort of roll out towards the hole. So you can see I just popped it out, very stabby sort of action, but it's come out in a nice kind of situation there. Now, if I do the same thing, but this time we imagine I've not really got any room to work with. So if I just chuck a golf ball down, say, a couple of feet on the green, so if you imagine that's the hole right there, how do I stop this ball quick with it being sat down? That is a really good question, and it's a hard shot. So what I'm essentially going to do is, if I was hitting to this first golf ball here, is I would have to play this a little bit more like a bunker shot. So I'm going to have to play this ball a little bit more forwards. I'm going to have to widen my stance, open the face. But here's the key, is I'm going to feel like I'm very much hitting down and letting that club head finish low. You can see when I do this, it just pops that ball up just that little bit quicker and stops it just that little bit quicker. Now actually for this shot here, that's not too bad of a result. I've probably got about 6 feet coming back there. I'm not sure if you can pick it up on the camera. Got about 6 feet coming back there. But the key with all of these shots, any shot that you're hitting out of the rough and it's sat down, is essentially you want to get a little bit more weight on that left leg, and you want to use those wrists to get that club up and feel like you can drop the club head down more. Now the other thing that I would say is just be careful in the rough. It can wrap around the hosel and close the face. So you might actually want to grip this one just a little bit tighter just to help sort of prevent that from happening. Now, a question I get asked all the time is, Giles, how do you play those delicate shots? Now, I left myself here a very delicate shot. As you can see from that behind camera, everything's on a downslope away from me. I've not got a huge amount of space to work with. And this is all this horrible Bermuda sort of fairway, so it's not going to run if I hit it on here. So first of all, if I'm hitting it out of the rough or I'm hitting it out of the fairway, the number one principle is that contact is key. And the way that we make life easier for ourselves, because these delicate swings have really short swings, is we have to get our setup right. So the number one reason is, again, that spine angle gets tilted this way. When golfers get this way, these delicate shots become very difficult. So if I start with the one on the fairway, I'm going to make sure my spine angle is neutral, maybe leaning slightly forwards. I get my setup perfect for the shot that I want to hit. So this one's a little bit of a softer shot here, something that lands a little bit quicker. I'm going to try and land this on the green. And then from there, it's having nice relaxed wrists in this situation and being okay with it having a shorter swing. A lot of people get scared with a shorter swing. It's okay if you've got your setup right. So spine angle in a good spot. My club's a little bit dirty, so I might not get the spin that I want, but let's see if I can pull this one off. So you can see really nice strike there, and I pulled that one off beautifully, nearly hold it. So you can see all of that came from that great setup. That great setup then allowed me to have nice and relaxed forearms. I'm able to then hit the ball perfectly, get that crisp strike. Now, if I'm in this situation here, ball sat down slightly in this rough, how do I then play this shot? Same principles. Again, I always start left below right to get my spine angle in a good position. Then I switch my hands over. But again, I've got to get that chest in the right spot at address, that spine angle in the right spot, get my weight set up in the right spot. And then from there, as long as I keep that club in front of me, I'm going to have a far higher chance of pulling this shot off successfully. So again, I'm going to try and land this on the green. It's going to be a lot harder with this one out the rough, but let's see what happens. So you can see that might just release on, yeah, it's just released on a little bit. These situations often in America, you've got to kind of get a little bit more brave, open that face up, lean left, and get used to playing it with a little bit more loft, maybe more like that. That one stopped a little bit quicker. But that's how you tackle delicate shots. So following on from the delicate shots, how do we hit something over a bunker? Because I know this is something that fills a lot of amateurs with fear, and it's the same principles as over there. The key is contact. The reason why amateurs are going to hit it in the bunker is if they hit it fat or thin or simply don't hit it hard enough. But the first one is always contact. Number one issue is people see the bunker, they lean back, and as a byproduct, that's going to get them bottoming out before the ball. That's going to make it very difficult to be successful. So again, make sure you get that spine angle in a good position, nail that setup. From there, the key is keep that chest turning. If you do those two things, you are going to be fine when it comes to these shots. A lot of it's in your head, so make sure that spine angle's good, make sure your setup's good, and then from there, keep that chest turning, and you'll hit these shots a lot better. Let's see if I can pop one close to the hole from this situation. And that's a perfect shot there. Oh, hit the flag. So you can see if you forget about the bunker, which is easier said than done, and focus on just nailing your setup, that's going to help you get your contact, and then just keep your chest turning. So let's now talk about hitting off sloping lies. Now we're going to do this a little bit differently because it's hard to find the correct lies around here and get the sun in the right spot for filming. So we're going to use the alignment stick as our imaginary slope. Now the first situation we're going to talk about is where the ball is above my feet. So if you imagine this slope is where the ball is, so it's above my feet here. So anytime the ball is above my feet, we're going to have to make alterations. And the first alteration is we are naturally going to stand taller. That's going to help us control how far our chest is away from the ground. Number two, we are actually going to grip down on the club. Now the way that I like to do it is I'll rest the club on the ground just like so, and I'll just let my arms hang down to where they naturally want to be. And you can see that's roughly around there. So from this situation, I've essentially shortened the club and made sure that I'm not going to chuck that club too far into the ground. So I'm getting taller, gripping down on the club there. Now, as I hit this shot, my key swing thought is to feel like I keep my height as I turn. Keep my height as I turn. Now, one thing that I would always say is if you imagine this is my slope right here, if I dropped the ball on it, where would it roll? It would obviously roll down the slope. So that is going to mean that when I hit this shot, it is naturally going to want to go to the left. Now, I'm not going to fight that. I'm just going to aim my body slightly to the right, and from there, hit the shot. The more severe the slope, as you can tell, that's a very severe slope, the more I'm going to start to aim to the left. Now let's now imagine I'm on a down slope. If I'm on a down slope and it's working away from me, the ball is now going to be lower than my feet. When it's lower than my feet, I'm going to have to make some alterations. The first one is I'm actually going to widen my stance and feel like I get my chest down a little bit lower. That's going to help me get into a position so I can get down to the golf ball more. Number two, I need to lengthen this club out. So I'm going to grip down right at grip up right at the top part of the shaft. And again, that's going to help me get that club to the ball. Now my key swing thought here when I'm hitting this shot is, again, keep that chest turning, but feel like I stay down on it more. So many people pop up when the ball is below their feet, and that makes it very, very difficult to hit these shots correctly. Again, if you imagine I was to drop the ball on this slope, you would see it roll away from me. So I'm naturally going to aim a little bit more to the left to allow for it to come back to the right. The more severe the slope, the more I am going to aim to the left to allow it to come back. Now, what if I'm hitting on an upslope like this alignment stick is showing? Well, in this situation here, anytime we're hitting on an upslope or a downslope, we are going to match our shoulders to the slope. So in this situation, I'm going to have my shoulders very much matching that alignment stick. This prevents me from digging the club into the upslope. Now, the key thing that I would say is in this situation here, I'm going to lean left. I'm going to make sure I've got a lot of pressure feeling like it's into the slope. So again, imagine this alignment sticks to slope. I'm going to feel like I lean into the slope. Now, in certain situations, you might want to grip down, you might want to grip up, depending on where the ball is, if it's slightly below your feet or above your feet. But for most shots, you're going to match your shoulders to the slope, and then you're going to lean into the slope. So you're going to have majority of the weight in your lead leg. Now, whenever you hit this shot, it always comes off higher. So if you usually hit a sound wedge in this situation, you might need to go down and hit a gap wedge or a pitching wedge to get it running more. So we often have to club down. We have to go to a lower lofted club in these situations. That's just a couple of keys to hitting a ball that's on a slight upslope. Now imagine I'm on a downslope here. So again, this is representing the downslope. In this situation, I'm going to match my shoulders to the slope. So I'm really going to feel like my left shoulder's lower than my right. And from here as well, I'm going to put all of my weight on my lead leg. Now, in terms of club selection here, when we're on a downslope, the ball's going to fire out lower and hotter. So if you're usually hitting a sound wedge in that situation, you are going to need to hit a lob wedge, something with more loft, or you might need to start to open the face. What a lot of people do in this situation is they keep their normal shoulder tilt, and then from there they try and hit it, and they'll hit it fat and thin every time. You've got to get that left shoulder down to match the slope, weight left, and feel like when you hit this shot, you finish low. That's going to help you hit these shots more successfully. So like I said, use the alignment stick representing the slope. That's a good visual for you, but this is a great way of learning how to hit shots off a slope. So now let's move on to one of the hardest shots in golf, which is the flop shot. How do we set up to this? Well, everything that we're doing here, number one, we've got to present as much loft as possible to get it up and down quick. And number two, we've still got to hit down on this. So setup wise, we're going to stand a little bit wider to the ball. This gives us a better base, but also we're going to stand further away. So this does two things for us. When we're wider, it gives us nice stability, allows us to move the low point forwards, but allows us to get our knees going a little bit more towards the target. This puts more weight in my lead foot, and from here, it provides that nice stable lower body that we're looking for. Number two, with me being wider away, when I'm further away, I'm able to drop the handle, which means when I open the face, I can still aim square. We don't need to aim left and try and cut across it. As long as we open the face and drop the handle, we are still going to be able to hit this shot nice and straight. The other great thing is when we drop the handle, it gives us a little bit of cup in that lead wrist, and we want to feel like we can keep that throughout the whole backswing. Because again, we're trying to keep loft on it. So let's not try and kill this ball. Let's try and do a nice smooth swing, but we're trying to maintain this cup in the lead wrist. So it's going to be narrow on the way back with a little bit of cup. That gets us setting the wrist up, and then we're going to release it on the way through. So you can see I really try and let that club head overtake the hands. I feel like the sole is slapping the ground, so it's thudding the ground, and then from there, that keeps the loft on the club right like so, and you can see it finishes very close. Long and smooth, so it's long and smooth. Don't start to get short and quick with it. It's going to be very, very hard to control. Now this off the fairway is the hardest lie. If it's in the rough, it's going to be a lot easier. So I'm getting that nice set up there, getting that hands in a lower position, set it up and through into this nice narrow spot. And if I'm able to do that, I'm going to start to hit some better shots. So let's run through how to hit those stinker lies shots. This is the last shot we're going to do before we work on to the bunker play. Now this is essentially where the ball is sat on sort of very dry grass, maybe even mud, and there's a lot of grass around it. So this could be an old divot, or it just could be very patchy grass. Now in this situation, if I hit it normally, it's very, very hard to get that good strike. So in severe circumstances, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same setup as sort of what I was talking about before, but I'm actually going to toe the club in. This gets the toe of the club more down, so it makes it easier to get it under the ball. Now obviously if I'm toeing the club in, I'm closing the face, I'll need to aim more to the right, but I'll also need to take an extra bit of loft. So if I usually want to play the shot with a gap wedge, I've got to play it with a sound wedge, I've got to play it with a lob wedge. That sort of situation. So let's see if I can pull this one off here. So I'm going to toe that wedge in slightly, get the handle high, and then hit a normal shot. So you can see, came out nicely from this horrible situation. Nearly held it, just caught the slope, ran on a little bit. But overall from here, these horrible lies, that's damage limitation. That's the key when it comes to this shot. So toe that club in, get that handle high, and you're going to be able to hit those shots more successfully. How do we hit a bunker shot just like that, where it pops out nice and soft, it goes to about 2 foot, and it gives us a nice gimme putt? Now, obviously, we've spoken a lot about general short game shots so far, but it's different in a bunker. There are a lot of similarities, but there are some key differences. Now, there are 2 key principles that we've got to learn when it comes to a bunker shot. Number 1, where do we make first contact with the sand? And number 2, how deep of a divot or how much sand are we trying to take? So let's answer those 2 questions very quickly. Where do we make contact? Are we hitting the ball then the ground, like a normal iron shot, a normal wedge shot? Are we hitting the sand first? Are we hitting them both at the same time? Well, what we actually do is we hit the sand first, we propel the sand out of the bunker, and as we propel it out, the ball flies out with it. So by hitting the sand first, it allows us to hit it with more speed because the ball comes off a little bit slower, generates more backspin, gives us more control. And that's why actually a lot of the best players in the world, they are so good out of a bunker that they would rather be in a bunker than they would in the rough. A lot of the time. It is crazy, I know. For a lot of you, you just want to get out, and I'm going to show you how to do that today. So that's where we hit first. We hit about a golf ball distance behind the golf ball. So the second key is how much sand are we taking? Well, if I sit up here in a good position and I just hit a shot or a random sort of swing, you can see it's a small amount. It's a healthy amount. It's like a little bit bigger than a dollar-sized bill or a £10 note if you're in the UK. But we don't want to be taking these massive gouges of sand. We also don't want to be taking no sand at all. Now, how do we set up to encourage those 2 things? Hitting a golf ball distance behind the ball and taking a nice amount of sand. Well, let's start from the face-on view. Number 1, we are going to make sure that our spine is neutral. Biggest issue I see in bunkers is golfers go like this. They set up to it kind of like a driver. They get too much tilt. Now, here's the thing. In a bunker, my sternum basically controls where I make contact with the sand. If I start to tilt, you see how it brings my sternum back? So in this situation, I'm going to bottom out way too early, hit it fat, maybe even thin a lot of the time. So I want to feel like I get my shoulders nice and level here, or it'll feel like my left shoulder is a little bit lower than my right. Now, in order to achieve this, I like to get golfers just to set up with their left hand lower than their right and then switch their hands around. You can see that pulls them into a good position. Once you've done that, you're then going to position your sternum about a golf ball distance behind the ball. Because again, we want to position our sternum where we're going to hit the ground. Another way of looking at it is the ball is kind of roughly underneath your left ear. Next up, we are talking about stance width. We're going to go wide in this position because a wide base, when we wiggle our feet in, gives us stability. From there, we want to get our pressure onto our left foot, but we don't want to do it by pushing our hips because that creates tilt. So our knees are going more towards the target, kind of like we're on a little bit of a downslope there. And you can see that helps me keep my spine angle in a good spot, and it gets my pressure a little bit more on my left leg. So from here, this has created a platform to where I can have a super stable base and let my upper body do the work. Now, a lot of questions get asked on how much should I open the face? So here's the rule. The more sand there is, the more you can open your face. Why? Opening the face increases the bounce, which basically means the leading edge comes more and more and more off the ground like so. Now, the more sand there is, this helps us. It's like skimming your hand through water. It helps it glide across the sand just like so. However, if you have no sand, and I know from where I'm from in the UK, a lot of the bunkers get washed out, there's no sand in it. If you step on in with a wide open club face and you hit that shot, the sole is going to kick off the bunker and it's going to hit it sort of that drop kick thin shot which nobody wants to hit. So with that in mind, we can reverse it. The less sand there is, the more you actually have to go back to a square face because that allows us to use the leading edge and allows the ball or the club to dig under the ball. Now, if you're ever in doubt, favor a square face over an open face. Now, as a general rule, if you're ever in doubt, favor more of a square face. Why? Because if you make the wrong choice, the consequences of it being square-faced is nowhere near as bad as it being an open face when it should have been more square. Shut-off position, neutral. Not forwards, not back, nice and neutral. Now, from the downline view, what are we doing? We need to control our depth, so how deep we throw the club into the sand. Now, the number one thing that we do to help us with this is control our distance away from the ball. Too many golfers get way too close, and then when they try and hit a shot, they do this, and they just take way too much sand, and you can see perfectly that ball comes back to me. Versus, naturally, obviously, logic would dictate if I go further away from it, and I do that same thing, you'll notice here that it's very, very difficult for me to then take that excessive amount of sand right there. That one came out maybe a little bit too hot, but you can see the amount of sand was a lot nicer and the result was a lot better. How do we control the distance away from it? I like to do something called stretch it, relax it. Stretch it, relax it. What that means is you're going to grip the club like you normally would, so face slightly open. You're going to set up in your posture and you're going to stretch your arms out as far as physically possible. So in theory, if you were to hit this shot here, you would thin it perfectly. Now, that's the stretch it phase. Now from here, I want to relax it by shuffling a golf ball closer. So you can see when I do that, now my arms are in a position here to where even if I was to extend them as far as I can, I would only go maybe that far under the ball. That's helping me control my depth. This is why if you watch Dan Greaves, who I, again, absolutely love Dan Greaves, you'll see him always go, right, step into my shoes, and people step in and always they go, wow, I'm so much further away from the ball than I thought. It's because when you stretch it and relax it, it helps you control how much sand you take. So if I piece all of those things together, you can see I've stretched it, I've relaxed it, I'm in this good position, spine angle's neutral, ball position is kind of under the sternum. I'm then going to just do a nice swing and you'll see that ball pop out beautifully. Let's give this one a hit right here. You can see it popped out. That was stunning right there. Now it's time to move on to the backswing. And again, I want to keep this as simple as possible. So let's start with what the body's doing, then what the hands, the wrist, the club's doing. So the very first thing is in the backswing, I've set myself at address in a good position here. So in the backswing, my lower body is there for stability. You might see it in a bunker turn a little bit, but there's no shift happening. So I'm very much using this to sort of turn on the way back a little bit, but it's mainly following what the chest is doing. But it's very much a chest driven motion right here. So if I do sort of a rehearsal swing, I would go sort of chest back and chest through, and you can see that gets me in a position to where I'm really rotating all the way through. What are the hands, the wrists, and the arms doing, and the club? When I get down low in this position and I'm stretching for it here, you can see I've created cup in my lead wrist. As I swing back, I'm going to swing this club sort of around me here, and you can see I'm keeping that cup. I don't want to lose it because suddenly that closes the face and I'm going to dig it a lot. So whatever position I set up in here with the face, if I maintain that cup in the backswing and the follow through, you can see that gets me into a really nice position. We don't need to overcomplicate it. It's a case of lower body stability. It might turn a little bit, but the big motor is the chest. And I'm going to keep the cup in that lead wrist and just let it swing back and swing through. And you can see I'm using a little bit of wrist here, but it's kind of happening naturally. As long as I have a good grip pressure, nice and relaxed, and I'm maintaining that cup and using the chest, the wrist set sort of happens by itself, which is the great thing about this shot. So if I sit up here, lean left, get my body in the correct position, let's see if I can execute this one here. So you can see, pop that one up beautifully. I'm getting good at this shot. I need to start making it a little bit trickier for myself. I've just jinxed myself there, haven't I? But as you can see, I'm doing a really nice job of getting that ball coming out nice and soft. For the downswing, what are we looking to see? Well, this is where, again, I want to split it up into the body versus the hands and arms and the wrist. I think that's the easiest way to go about this. So if I was just to do a motion without a golf club, just with my hand here, I'd obviously turn a little bit on the way back, but on the way through, I'm going to turn my body and post up on that left leg. So I've got a lot of pressure on that left leg, and I've got my chest and my hips pointing towards the target. So I'm never backing away. This is something I struggle with in a bunker shot. I've done this my whole career. I'd always set up this way, and as I come down, I'd sort of back out of it, and I'd hit too far behind the ball. So you want to feel like you can keep sort of your head over maybe the inside part of your foot here, and you're going to go here. And if you're going to go anywhere, you're going to go forwards, and maybe your head's going to go up. We don't want to dip down, but we want to make sure that we're sort of finishing on that lead leg and we're turning towards the target. So that's what the body's doing. We're not shifting away from it. If we are going to shift, it's going to be towards it, and we're going to make sure we keep turning, just like so. That wasn't the greatest of examples, but you can see I'm turning all the way through, finishing on that left leg. Number two, what do the wrists, the hands, the arms, all of that stuff do? So we're in a good position here. Now, as we come down, we're going to start to release this club head down. So we're going to feel like we can return this club back to a neutral position here with the shaft lean. And then as we come through, I like to get people to feel like they exit by their left hip nice and close. Now, yes, you can talk about hitting a low one and all of that jazz, and we'll do that in a bit. But for a standard shot, I like to get people to feel like they set up neutral shaft, they swing back, they release it as they turn their chest, and they finish with their hands close to their left rib cage, sort of left hip bone, left pocket in that sort of situation. Again, you'll see Dan Greaves talk about this all the time. I reference him because I love his work, and he's got an amazing book out there, so go check out that book. And you can see if I hit a shot just like this out of the shot, let's see if I can recreate that here. You can see there, see that one, I probably took a hit. You can see my old tendency of falling back came in. I hit too far behind the sand. So it wasn't the best of strikes, but because I was releasing the club and turning through, it still popped out in a good situation there. So I got away with it. And that's the thing, a good bunker technique means you will get away with it when you don't quite hit perfect shots, because nobody's going to hit a perfect shot every single time. And that's a prime example there. Didn't get the best of contacts, but I was still able to pop it out. Now, let's troubleshoot a couple of issues. Issue number one is a poor setup. Go check out all of the setup stuff. But the biggest one is I see golfers get too close to it to do the stretch it and relax it. That's going to help you in terms of taking the right amount of sand. So if you take too much sand, check that out. And also if you hit too far behind the ball, make sure you're not doing what I always do, which is get too much tilt. In that situation, feel like you go sort of left below right, get that spine angle in a better position, and then from there it'll be a lot easier for you to hit sort of these shots that just pop out a little bit easier. Next up, if you're a golfer that digs too much or hits the ball way too far, so you find it very hard to hit it soft, make sure you keep that cup in that left wrist. If you don't, if you have a flat left wrist, that face is going to get too square or too close for these shots, and it's going to come out hotter. So make sure, even if I'm hitting to that sort of further one back there, I'm keeping that cup in that wrist in the backswing and letting that club head release right there all the way to that back one. And you can see that one then flies out a little bit further. Please go in. Oh, so close. But you can see that I kept the cup in the wrist. That helps me get that strike really nice. So if you do dig at it or you do hit it too far, that's going to help you massively. For the downswing, if you do what I do and you fall back away from the ball, oh, I got a good drill for you. We're going to grab a towel and place it, or it depends how confident you are. I would start maybe a club head, 2 club head lengths behind the ball, just like so. So you can lay this towel down just like this. That therefore provides you sort of a platform to miss it. And then as you get more and more confident, you can bring that towel closer and closer and closer. So pat it down nice and tight. Let's see what happens here. So if I hit it back to that back one there, you can see this is going to push my strike more forwards. And you can see that, that was beautiful there. Loads of spinners that came out, and you can see I avoided that towel, got that good ball and ground contact. Now let's move into the final troubleshoot problem, which is if you're that golfer who is struggling with the shanks, then make sure that as you come down, you're not throwing your arms sort of towards the target. The golf swing is on an arc. So as I come through, I want to feel like I let that club come back in closer to my left pocket. That's a great swing thought. By doing that, you're going to release the club and get everything into a much better position here. So if I set up in, get the ball in a half decent position and I hit a shot, notice how my hands sort of exit more towards my left pocket. They're not out and away from me. So here's what this one will look like. And you can see there, that's actually hit the other hole that's there that you can't see, but it's gone towards the target and it fixed those shank shots. So let's finish off by talking about some specialty shots. Shot number one is that bare lie bunker shot. Now, unfortunately, the bunkers here are really, really good. Well, not necessarily unfortunately, but as you can see here, if I have a bare lie, there is not much sand underneath the ball. So in this situation, I'm actually going to have to go digging a little bit more to take sand. Now, we all know those bunkers, you know, where maybe it's been washed out by rain or the sand's very inconsistent. So in those situations, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to play this a little bit more square-faced. This helps me get that leading edge digging, because if I open the face up, it's just going to bounce off. But number two is, rather than stretch it and relax it, I'm going to get a little bit closer to the ball. This helps me get more on top of it, and this helps me therefore chuck the club into the sand, take a little bit more sand essentially. It helps me get that good contact. I'm still hitting a golf ball behind, but because the sand's a lot more compact, I've kind of got to chase that sand a little bit more. So in this situation, I would also hit it softer because the ball's going to come out faster essentially. So if I just hit one to that flag there, imagining this is sort of a bare lie shot, you can see that pops the ball out, and that actually gets it running all the way back there, nearly about 1 foot away, which is a really, really nice spot. Now, obviously, these bunkers here are phenomenal at the reunion at the Ledbetter Academy, so very hard to sort of find a lie like that. Now, the second kind of golf shot is the dreaded fried egg. Wow, that is a peach right there. That is horrendous. How do we hit this one? There are two main ways. One of them is way too hard for a lot of us. It is where you set up with the hosel literally pointing the club, and as you hit the shot, you sort of close the face down. It's a great way of getting that ball popping out sort of nice and soft. It looks something a little bit more like this. And you can see it pops that ball out really soft, but most of us don't have the ability to play that shot. If you want to play that shot, essentially you set up with the hosel pointing towards the club, and as you swing, you close the face down massively, like you're trying to hit a hook. That cuts under the ball, allows you to hit a shot that pops out just like that from a horrendous lie. Granted, it's really hard to control the direction. You can see that popped out to the right, but it did come out soft. The second kind, we could do better than that. The second kind, there we go, that's horrible. The second kind is basically like we just played with the shot before. A little bit more close to the ball, club face a little bit squarer, and we're just going to have to brute force this out sort of like this. So let's see if I can get this one out. Brute force it out with a square face hitting down on it. And you can see that pops the ball out, but obviously it's going to release a lot more. Again, that's actually a really good shot there, gone to about 2 feet. But you have to factor in the fact that number one, it's going to release a lot. And number two, you're not going to have any spin on it, so it's harder to control. You're very limited on what you can do there. So how do we hit a shot to a really tight flag? Well, essentially, we've got to get that ball up very quick and not going forwards as much. So we need to reduce how much that ball comes off the face, the speed that it comes off the face. One of the best ways of doing that is actually gripping down the club quite a bit. So the shorter you make the club, if you do the same swing, the slower the club head speed's going to be, because essentially think about a driver versus an iron. It's a longer shaft, so therefore the club head moves faster around your body. So if I grip down on this quite a bit and I do the same technique as before, you know, keeping that cup in that lead wrist, open that face up, you'll notice how this ball pops out really, really nicely. And you can see it pops out super soft, gets very, very close to the hole, and that helps you tackle those nice short flags. So the final thing I want to talk about is distance control. Now, when it comes to a bunker shot, you need to find out how far you can hit each club. So that essentially means, right, with my 58-degree wedge here, if I do a nice standard technique, I do a nice smooth full swing, and I finish there, how far does that carry? Now, I know for me, if I'm maintaining balance, my 58-degree wedge with a good technique where I can generate spin will fly about 20 yards. That's kind of how far I see it. Now, if I want to hit anything from 20 yards and in, I will then change kind of the length of swing and how much I open the face. Now, in reality, I'm not going to really try and push it anything further than 20 yards because my strike goes a little bit more inconsistent because I fall off balance. So what if I have 25 yards? I'll get rid of that one and I'll go to my gap wedge, which is 52 degrees. Now, I know for this shot, I will hit anything from sort of 20 yards to 40 yards. That's kind of the range here. Same technique as with the 58, same everything, but because naturally it's got less loft, it's going to carry further, and that's going to help me. Now, unfortunately, this club is not going to do for the shot I'm faced here. I've got about 52 yards to that first flag over there in the far distance on the far green. So for me here, I'm going to use exactly the same bunker technique as I've been doing here because it's still inside sort of that 60-yard range, but I'm going to use a pitching wedge. So I'm still going to set up with the face slightly open. I'm still going to do stretch it, relax it, still all of that stuff. Still feel like the lower body's there for stability, upper body's there as the engine. But I'm going to try and hit it to that back flag over there. So let's see if I can do this here. It's a little bit of a trickier shot this, but again, it's all to do with just changing the club to help us change the distance. And I've hit that beautifully, and that's carried to the front edge, and that is probably from here to that flag, I'd say about maybe 10, 12 feet short of the flag. It had a hell of a lot of spin on. So there you have it. That is my complete short game guide. Now I can definitely dive into it in more details in certain areas, and there's a few shots that I haven't covered, but I feel like that's kind of as much information as you're ever going to get in a YouTube video, to be honest. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Please give it a like and the channel subscribe, and if you need more one-to-one help, I offer online coaching on the Skillers platform. The link is down below.